This is a video on graphing absolute values. Now, if we remember, an absolute value is something like y equals the absolute value of x. And what this is telling us is that any value of x that I plug into this equation is going to come out with a y value that's equal. So one of the ways that we could graph this is we could go ahead and just create a good old t-chart or an xy table. And I'll just give three numbers on each side of 0. So -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. So if I plug -3 into this, the absolute value of -3 is 3. The absolute value of -2 is 2. The absolute value of -1 is 1. The absolute value of 0 is 0. The absolute value of 1 is 1. Remember, it's always going to be positive. It doesn't just switch the sign. It's always positive because it's actually a distance from 0. The absolute value of 2 is 2. The absolute value of 3 is 3. And you can kind of see it's the same thing. It's just repeating itself backwards. And if I went to graph this at -3, 3, -2, 2, -1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, what I find is that I end up getting a straight line on either side. So I'm going to get a line this way and a line that way. And what we're going to find is that all absolute values are going to end up being this V shape. So let's look at another one. Absolute value of x plus 3. We can do the same thing, a little t-chart. I'm not going to even do the chart. I could, but if I plug in -3, absolute value of -3 is 3. 3 plus 3 gives me 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Plug in -2. The absolute value of -2 is 2. 2 plus 3 is 5. Absolute value of -1 is 1. Plus 3 is 4. Absolute value of 0 is 0. Plus 3 is 3. Absolute value of 1 is 1. Plus 3. The absolute value of 2 is 2 plus 3. The absolute value is 3. 3 is plus 3. So what's happened is it's the exact same V-shaped graph that looks just like that. It just moved up 3 spaces. It's the same graph, literally just moved up 3 spaces. If I do this one's a little different because this one says do the operation inside first, then take the absolute value. So if I plug in -3, -3 plus 2 is -1. Absolute value of -1 is 1. -2 plus 2 is 0. The absolute value of 0 is 0. The absolute value of, or -1 plus 2 is 1. The absolute value of 1 is 1. 0 plus 2 is 2. The absolute value is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. The absolute value is 3. Okay. If I keep going and I plug in 2, 2 plus 2 is 4. The absolute value of 4 is 4. It's going up. So I'm going to go back a little bit and plug in -4. -4 plus 2 is -2. The absolute value of -2 is 2. And I can see that my V is forming. Oops, didn't want to do that. My V is forming over here. So where this one moved it up and down, this one took that same graph that we had initially and just moved it over to the left. Now, when I graph these, I have 4 basic options. I can have a number out front. I can have a number next to the X, I can have a number inside the parenthesis, or I could have a number outside. And what we just saw is that a D value, or the value that's outside at the end, this is going to move it up if it's positive, or down if it's negative. And if I look at the C value, well, we had a positive. This actually looks like a positive. So if the number is positive, it moves it to the left. And to the right if negative. Now, that's a simplified form of this. So y equals the absolute value of x minus 6. Well, the minus 6 is a negative, so it moves it to the right 6. It's actually because it's supposed to be negative. It's not, so it's positive, whatever. Let's just look at it like this for simple rules. If the number inside is a negative, moves to the right. If the number inside is a positive, moves to the left. A does some interesting things. So A will flip it if negative. An A value greater than 1 will make it skinnier or steeper. And an A value between 0 and 1 will make it more narrow. Or I'm sorry, will make it wider. We're not going to really talk about B values yet. We will, but for now, we're not going to really talk about it. And the only reason I'm talking about the A, C, and D is because these are exactly the same for every kind of function that we're going to deal with. So A, C, and D do the same things with absolute values as they do quadratics, as they do trinomials, as they do any type of graph, sine waves, if you see it in the calculus or whatever you're dealing with. A, C, and D do the same thing. All right. B does a couple different things, and we'll talk about that later. But this has been a little tutorial on how to graph absolute values and what the different variables can do. So I want you to just pause this after I write it and think about what would happen to this. So pause it now and answer to yourself. All right. So the 2 right here is more than 1, so it would make it skinnier, it's steeper. And the C is -3, so it'd move it to the right 3. So this would be skinnier or narrower by a factor of 2. And move 3 to the right. All right, so what about this one here? What would happen? Pause it and think a sec. So the negative out front would flip it. The +6 would move to the left 6, and the +2 would move it up 2.